Hey guys, it's Kevin again with episode 2 of the Do It for a Living video podcast here. So last episode we kind of mentioned that I wanted to go over numbers such as like the shop efficiency, the revenue, the expenses, and I'm going to get to that with it now being January 31st. So at the end of this episode, I'll go through all the different numbers here. But before we get started on that, I wanted to continue with the shop tour a little bit here. And this time I wanted to go over my toolbox. So actually walking through my toolbox. It's a not a very pretty toolbox. It's kind of beat to crap, and I've broken it a couple times. And Snap-on, so they fix it for free. But the way it's organized is pretty cool. So originally, I just did what everybody else does and just kind of shove every tool you can possibly think of inside of it, and then it winds up being too small of a box. So then you want to get a bigger box, and then you just keep filling whatever you have with tools, and that doesn't work very well, or at least doesn't work as well as it can. And there's a methodology for organizing. It's really meant for manufacturing, but it works really well for what we do as well. It's called 5S, and 5S is really a workplace organization method. And so you'll see like some examples of like assembly lines where they have tape written or laid out on a workbench where the tools need to go. And also like if you work on airplanes, a lot of their toolboxes have shadow boxes in there. You use coins to, when you pull a tool out, you put a coin in, and planes can't leave until all the tools are put back, sort of deal. So that's kind of what I have gone to. And so in a second here, I'll show you my toolbox and what I did. But ultimately, the idea of 5S is sort, straighten, shine, standardize, and sustain. And the first one is really what we're going to talk about, is sorting. So the idea with sort is not to have every single tool you possibly can use in the toolbox. It's to use only what you need and nothing more. And so that's what I've gone to. And it's pretty cool for me because I'm only working on Evos. You know, I know exactly what tools I need because I've been doing it for so long. If you're somebody who works on every type of car, it's a little bit harder to do this. But certainly if you're like a GTR shop, you could do this. If you're a Subaru shop, you could do this. And I get that there's always the inevitable car that has, you know, like an aftermarket part with standard sockets and wrenches on it. That happens, and you know, I have another toolbox with everything else that I'll need. I just don't use it primarily. And I also did the shadow box foam. I got it from 5ssupplies.com, and I'll show you that. And then I also am going to do another toolbox that I have in my engine assembly room. I have the foam here. I haven't cut it yet, and I'll do maybe the next episode I'll go through cutting that out, setting up exactly how I want in that. But yeah, so let's get started with the toolbox tour, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, so here's what I've got. I've got a Snap-on roll cart. It's in this blue color. I've had this thing for probably 7 or 8 years. It's nice and great condition. You can see all the dents in it. If you ever visit us at the PRI show in the My Shop Assist booth, we oftentimes bring this one out there and use it as a display, mostly to show how like an iPad or whatever can work on the toolbox. But in this case, I've just got the top is always open. I don't ever have to lock it. So I've got my Loctite up here, and some WD-40. Loctite is, I use it on every single clutch, so flywheel bolts, pressure plate bolts. Just to the right here, I've got my most common 3/8 drive sockets, so 21, 19, 18, 17, 16, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. So those are my most common ones, and I often hang customer car keys here. I've got a magnetic flashlight, and I've got another flashlight down here. I've got pens and mirrors here. These are just whenever I need pens, I just pull one out. And I've got some of my magnets along the top here. Razor blades I use quite a bit. And I actually have several of the wheel keys that I use those when people don't have them. I've got zip ties. I got smaller ones in here. I use those a lot, and brake clean. And then across the top here is my sockets here. And so you can see I've got this laid out pretty well. So I've got my 1/4" drive sockets. I've got 2 rows of 3/8 and 2 rows of 1/2 inch. And it's every socket that I would need to do any part on an Evo. Yeah, every single socket I could ever need is in this little tray right here. And so also along the top here, I've got my impact. I've got a pry bar, my air chuck, and on the other side I've got a bigger pry bar and a long screwdriver that's not anywhere else, and what I call my ovary snatchers, but probably an inappropriate term. And so the idea with having the sockets up on top, or the most used sockets, and these sockets down here on the lid here, is I'm using them pretty much all the time. And it doesn't make sense to have to keep opening a drawer all the time. And I've used this thing so often that all the ones I need are on here. And the tray doesn't have enough holes for all of them, so I have some of them laying down here. The lesser used ones are laying down. Yeah, so that's the idea with this tray being on the top. I'm using it a lot. Every single car, I'm constantly grabbing different sockets, so I make it outside and easy to access. In the first drawer, this is more of my sockets. So you can see I've got all the half-inch torque wrench, digital torque wrench, breaker bar, and a ratchet. And then I've got my 3/8 torque wrench, my 3/8 wobble head ratchet, and some smaller ones, 1/4 inch, and then a really short 3/8. I've got the various extensions in here. I've got a spline drive lug socket, oil filter wrench, different extensions, wobble extensions, and my Allen wrenches are along the side here. And I've got my my tap drivers right here. So these are all the various deals that I use throughout the cars. And this one is pretty well laid out. I have lost one of my 1/4 drive extensions, and that's one thing nice about doing the shadow box is it's really easy to see when you're missing stuff. It's just you just look at it, and if you can't find it, it's gone. Same thing over here. This guy actually rounded itself off so much it didn't work anymore. And this one I have no idea where it went either. That's one of the tap drives. So that's drawer number one. And all this thing I hand cut out myself. So I laid it out how I wanted it on the foam. I traced the little tools out in the pattern that I wanted, and then I cut them out, and then I cut a groove where you can lay your fingers in there so you can get to them easily. Without this little groove, they're quite difficult, some of them, to get in and out. In the next drawer, this is all my ratchet wrenches and line wrenches and whatnot. And so in here, I've got all the primary ones in the middle here. They're all metric, of course, so 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, up to 19. Along here are my stubbies. Lesser used, but it's something that I do find I use quite often, especially if I need to use two of them, 2 wrenches, one on the nut and one the other on the bolt. These are my offset wrenches. This is one of my most used wrenches here, 1214 offset, and this is a Craftsman one. Snap-on one doesn't make one this deep that I know of. Great for doing manifold nuts on Evo 8 because it offsets enough to get a good flat grip on the nut and then not hit the valve cover. Got my A&L wrenches. One thing I noticed is the dash 16 doesn't ever stand upright because this foam is not quite thick enough to hold it. If I had done it again, I would probably lay this one flat. Over on this, actually, I have added one tool into this box since I did this foam about a year ago. This is a 1314 line wrench. I find I've been using this more often to replace like ACD pump lines and whatnot. They're pretty heavy-duty hydraulic line that I can't get off with. Just can't always get off with just a regular 14 like this one here. And then over here, this is a mistake I made cutting it out. This guy was a little small and kind of hidden underneath another tool, and I didn't give him a slot, so he just kind of sits on the edge here. But these are all real long ones. I really love using the long ones because it takes a lot less effort to break the bolts loose. And these are ratchet one side and box end on the other side, so they work really well. They got a 14, a 16. This is for specifically for doing the tensioner pulley on the serpentine belt for an Evo 10. It's a 16 to loosen that guy. And this is a flat, so I can reach right up along the frame rail and grab it. So you can see every single tool is very specific. It's got a 24 box end. That's for doing the fill plug on a rear diff. So that's the socket or wrenches. The next one are my pliers drawers. These are really all the ones I use for pretty much everything. So I got a really long needle nose, adjustable wrench, spanners, wiring, dikes. This is my 90-degree pliers. I use this one probably the most of anything. These guys don't use quite as often. This one's actually really nice. I got these. These are like body clip pliers, so you can grab little body clips on the under trays and pull them off. That one's a a straight on, and this one's an offset, so you can grab them from an angle, pop them off. This guy is an exhaust hanger pliers. So you stick this guy, come on, there we go, and it pushes the rubber off the pins, metal pins that are on the exhaust, and it pushes them right out. It's really, really quite handy. So I use a zip tie to hold it together because it doesn't stay shut. And then this is my hose cutter for cutting like AN hoses and vacuum hoses and whatnot. It's just a razor blade. Also snaps really nice. I like that one. And so this drawer is really well organized, very easy to keep straight. And the last one that I've got cut out of foam is my screwdriver drawer, and I got my hammers over here. And this one is an Allen, or sorry, O2 wrench, like a O2 line wrench. That one's actually on the dyno now, so I don't have it in this box very often. This guy is a real short crescent wrench that I've lost. But I've got like my spark plug gapping tool, Phillips head, and flat blade drivers. So pretty straightforward here. The next one, this one is kind of a mess, and I've been trying to look for better ways of doing this one. Taps and dies and loose Allen wrenches. And then I've got a whole bunch of just miscellaneous tools that I use that are just kind of a pain in the butt. So this is like a slide hammer for taking the stub axles out of an Evo transfer case or transmission. I've got like sealant and like anti-seize and that sort of stuff here. Electrical tape. We actually modify injectors. We shave off the tabs on them, so you can put the little metal clips on it, pull the connector off, and then clip it onto the new injectors. Makes it much easier to do. So yeah, if you have any ideas on how to organize these taps and dies better, I have the big giant case for some of them, but I don't use all of them, so I just don't want them all in here. And actually, a lot of these probably I can go through these again and clear them up. But yeah, this is a great tool for taking off valve springs. This is a timing belt tensioner tool for taking the tension off the Evo 8 timing belt. Yes, that's the gist of it. And then the last drawer I've got is just the cased tools. So we've got like our, this would be our soldering iron. I've got a brake pad spreader. This is a really awesome tool. Coolant pressure tester. This is a valve stem seal kit, stud extractor, and the last one is the bolt extractor. So I've got two of my most common ones. Multimeter I use quite a bit, and then this is my boost leak tester with the various couplers that I use. So yeah, that's the gist of it. Really straightforward. I can fix pretty much everything on any Evo that I get here, with the sole exception of the actual engine internals, and I have a different box for that. And I will go over that one in the next episode, where I actually cut the foam out. And I'm going to lay that one out a different way than this, where it's all the sockets are together and all the wrenches are together. I'm planning on doing that based off what engine I'm working on. So if I'm working on a 4G63, I'm going to lay out all the tools I need to do a 4G63, cut the foam out for it, and make it a drawer. So that way I can just work from one drawer whenever I'm working on an engine. So yeah, that's it for the toolbox tour. And let me go next to the numbers of the shop. Okay guys, so I wanted to go over my numbers here. And so I already mentioned that there's really two to three big things that I really wanted to focus on. So one is the hours spent at the shop, and the other one is the actual P&L for the shop. And so the hours is the one I can really mess with, and this is one I've got down pretty good. So we'll take a look at this really quick. So in MSA, this is my time clock report. This is going to be the report for the amount of hours me and Richard have spent at the shop. So we use this little clock in, clock out button here. And you can see, so I've got myself and Richard here, and we're running the date range over January 1st to January 31st. So I did 171 hours and Richard did 83. So Richard's a little higher than normal, mostly because we're working on bringing a new product to our offerings. we're really focusing on bringing tuning for the F-150 installs and tuning to the F-150. And Richard had one, sold it, and bought another one here this last week. And so it's been on the dyno every day this week. And we were also working on building out packages the week before. We had a customer vehicle in trying to figure out, tuning and setting it up on the dyno and all that sort of stuff. So we spent a bunch of time, and none of that stuff is billable. And we'll see that in these reports where Richard is here a lot, but not necessarily efficient as far as billable hours go. But in the long run, this should work out really well for us. So between me and Richard, we have 254 hours total spent at the shop this month. And that's, like what a 1.5-man shop would do, I guess. And the next thing I want to look at is this employee service report. So this is going to tell us how many actual billable hours we're doing. So if I pull up mine first here, so I'm looking at tasks completed for myself over January 1st to January 31st. And I'm going to separate them between hourly and fixed. So most of the things I do are fixed pricing. I do some hourly stuff, but not very much. So looking down the list here, you can see the date I did it on, whose vehicle it was, what I did. Estimated hours is really my billable time, and recorded hours is the actual time I spent doing it. So an efficient job is something where it shows up as green, and inefficient job is something that shows up as red. So for example, this red one, oil change right here. I've really just looked at this month for oil changes. I'm really shitty at doing oil changes, apparently. They're all inefficient. Either I need to charge more. I'm only charging about $25 to do an oil change. I need to make it more like 50. I know it sounds really crazy that it takes so long to do an oil change, but it's mostly because I'm putting it on a lift, raising it up, checking everything, looking the car over a little bit. It's not just a straight drain and fill. But it still takes my time, so I need to charge for it, especially if it's something that I do quite often. Other things that I really like doing are going to be clutches. So like, for example, here's a clutch job. I billed for 9 on an Evo 10 and I spent 5.4 on it, right? And then 2 days later, I did an Evo 8 clutch job. I billed for 8. I spent 4.7 hours on it. And so those are ones that I'm really efficient on. I like doing them because I've done 1,000 of them, it seems like. I did 2 more of them in the last 2 days here, one on an Evo 10 and one on an Evo 8. Both of them, 4.8, 4.4 hours. And so highly efficient on those. Very profitable jobs for me. Some of the other things can vary a little bit. Tuning, sometimes they're real easy, sometimes they're not. So this one right here is actually a dual map tune. Sometimes I don't start and stop the timer between the 2 tunes, but I spent 3.34 hours between these 2. So really 5 hours billable, 3.3 hours spent. This one here was a speed density tune. I spent 6.3 hours on it. I actually do only bill for $600, 5.5 for that one. So not super efficient on that one, but it was that was a problematic car on the dyno. That's why it took so long. Here's a good one, a fuel pump install. This one is actually, I think I changed the price on the in bill because it was a double pumper that I had to take apart and service and stuff. So it took me quite a lot longer than normal. So down at the end here, total number of estimated hours completed on fixed task prices, and then these are my hourly. So total of about 162 hours or so billable time, and actual time spent is about 127 hours actual spent. So if I compare that 162 to my actual 171, I'm almost 1-to-1, so almost 100% efficient billable time versus time spent at the shop, which is really awesome. Like that is, I can't ask for any more than that. However, it can be more because I did spend time. My actual hours worked were, about 40, 50 hours short of what I was actually able to bill. And that 40, 50 hours of time, I know exactly where I went. I spent 2 days cleaning the shop, probably 16 hours or so, 15, 16 hours of cleaning the shop, mopping the floor. Monday, I spent 4 hours entering receipts. Let's see what else I did. I did some work on my own vehicles this week that I had to do that I haven't done in ages. And, that takes time as well. I think I spent about a day doing that. So you can see where the time is going. If I really wanted to do it, and I probably will for next month just so we can all see it, I will break down how much time I'm actually spending entering receipts and how much time I'm actually cleaning the shop so I can have line items, non-billable line items for that to see where the time is going. But yeah, so I'm pretty efficient. I'm very happy with that. I know I can do better, and in February I should. But if you look at your time and you're able to come anywhere close to 1 hour spent versus actually build, I think you're going to be doing real well. Richard's time here. So I did the same report for Richard. Again, he's not here nearly as much as me half the time. And again, this month, he spent probably more than half his time working on the new vehicle and developing out the product for that. So he built out 44 hours here in 1.6, so just say 45 hours build and he spent 24 hours or so actually working on vehicles. His are very profitable because he's doing mostly tunes when he comes in, so he tries to do one tune a night. And so does a lot of tuning, and I do all the installs before the car gets here for him, and that seems to work out really well for us. So out of his total time here, he spent, I think it was like 82 hours. He has 45, so he's a little over halfway, 50% efficiency, but that will go way up as we actually are doing paying jobs on these F-150s. So that's what we look to do in the future, and ultimately our goal for this year is to see if we can get Richard working full-time, and in order to do that, we're going to have to bring up, he's going to have to be doing 160 hours a week and have to be doing close to 150 plus billable hours a month. Okay. So here we go. What we got next is that's our shop efficiency. Next, I want to look at my profit and loss. So what I've got here is my QuickBooks Online login, and I went to reports and I ran my P&L for the month of January. So what you can see is total revenue for the shop in January was $35,600. Over the last probably 5 or 6 years, we average around $450,000 to $475,000 a year in total revenue, and that averages out to be about $37,500 a month. So we're really close to my average. I think I can do a little better than that this year, and with Richard bringing on a new product, I think that's where we'll see most of the gains. For this month, especially, my part sales, although the ratio here of cost of goods sold versus part sales looks bad, it's actually a little deceiving because I get, like, say for example, I order a clutch in January and I take payment on it. In December, order a turbo in December for $2,000, and I get billed for it in January. So the bill, I put it in here in January, but the profit was shown in December because I was paid in December. So this number fluctuates. By the end of the year, it should be where it should be. But it's a little deceiving this month. So yeah, I mean, total cost of goods sold, $13,000. Subcontracted services, this is a revenue from, like, say, like a transmission rebuild or machine shop labor that I don't necessarily do. So I separate it out so I know that I'm not the one doing the work. It will show up under my subcontracted services. Going down here, the car and truck payments. This is my truck payment and fixing my vehicles to make sure we use the truck for moving parts around and towing cars all the time. So that's what this expenses is. Contractors is my machine shop guy, paying Shepherd, Jacks, whoever it may be, for rebuilding transmissions and machining engines. Shop insurance, office supplies, some of the stuff's pretty normal for everybody. Right now I'm paying myself $6,000 a month, which is $75,000 a year, and I want to get that probably by the end of the quarter up to $8,000 a month. I just feel like that's a pretty good number for where I should be. I know it sounds maybe high for some people, but I'm doing this to make money, not to have fun and do it all for free. And Richard, we want to get on here in payroll, and once he's able to start doing billable time on the F-150 trucks, then we can probably get him getting paid as well, and then I can get him on the payroll for that. And we should be able, between the two of us, if we're both doing $100,000 a year, that's about $18,000 a month with payroll and taxes on that. So we need to be doing, once you add in all the other expenses plus our payroll, we need to be doing about $28,000 gross profit just to cover that, and it needs to be more than that so we have room to take some profit, be able to buy new equipment and whatnot. So really $35,000 gross profit is where we need to be every month if Richard's working full time, taking a paycheck at $8,000 a month. Other things like our rent is fixed, $35,200. QuickBooks, this is credit card processing fees. Never liked that one. Shipping, can't avoid that. Shop supplies, this changes every month. Small tools and equipment, we've got most of the things we need, but this will change a lot depending on like parts for the dyno and stuff like that. and utilities, that one's pretty fixed, doesn't change as much. So this month we profited $6,000, paid myself only $6,000, so there's a total of $12,000 on there. Ultimately, at the end of the year, whatever profit there is, I still have to pay taxes on it anyway because it all goes under my taxes. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to look to try to bring our total revenue up some more with bringing Richard on and try to get him on full time this year is really where we want to be. That would be really cool to have enough F-150 work to support a full-time job, and then we can grow from there. All right, so that's it. If you have any questions on how we do all this stuff, or if you see me doing something wrong that I should fix, tell me, let me know. And you know, with the MSA stuff, these reports are really useful, and I'm going to go over some more of them in the next video, which should probably be like mid-February. We'll kind of get an update, and I got some other things that I want to show as far as like cutting out the shadow board for the other toolbox, and we'll get an update on the F-150 stuff. So thanks, guys, and let me know if you liked the video, and be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you haven't already.